Hey, so in this episode, we are tapping into all the things that employees deal with at work. Microaggressions, discrimination, I want a promotion. They wrote me up, TJ, and it wasn't fair. You'll want to stay tuned from beginning to end. Tap in. Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Let's Talk About It, the podcast. I'm your girl, Twana Yvonne, but of course, you can call me TJ. It's just easier to say, easier to spell, and easier to remember. Now, we are back for season 2. I cannot believe it's been a whole year, but we're excited to jump into season 2 with y'all, still sprinkling in HR tips, tricks, and strategies, whether you're an employee navigating workplace stuff or a small business owner or corporate leader. We've got you. Now, before we jump into the show, y'all already know I got to bring in my girl, Miss PTMG, Shatima. How you doing, girl?
Hey, Miss TJ. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Season 2.
Season 2. We growing up.
We are. It came by fast.
It did.
Yeah, like everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Are you ready to get this show going?
I am. What's been happening in the media?
You know, I don't know if you had a chance to see. Did you hear about Drewski and him going to NASCAR?
I saw a photo, but I just need you to give me a little bit of background on what's going on and why it's viral. He didn't look like Drewski.
Everybody likes Drewski. So Drewski, you know, the comedian, he did a skit. So we found out it was a skit, and he essentially dressed up as a Caucasian hillbilly. And he went to NASCAR. And when I say dressed up, like from head to toe, hands, fingers, like White Chicks. Remember the show White Chicks, the movie with Marlon Wayans and them?
So that's why he didn't look like Drewski.
He did not look like Drewski. Matter of fact, when it started to come on my timeline, I didn't know who it was.
That's what I'm saying. When I saw it, I'm like, well, I don't see Drewski.
Yes, he's sunburned. He has tattoos on. He has a blonde, you know, kind of like dirty brown wig on, a hat. He's in coveralls, walking around NASCAR.
And what's the skit about? Like, help me.
So the skit, my understanding is he went as a skit. He dressed up as a hillbilly NASCAR attendee, and he engaged with the fans that were there participating. What has caused it to go viral, you know, amidst the costume just looking so real, is that he, you know, interpreted or, you know, spoke like, you know, a hillbilly would. He targeted, you know, like black people that were there.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so he was like, you know, one of the scenes, he's in his car and he's God Bless America song is going. He's, hey, bro, how you doing? He's like...
Okay, so he is imitating what he believes hillbillies do and say.
Yes.
And some of it is unfavorable for black folks?
Well, I think what it is he, you know... At least in one of the skits, he's in his car, in this truck. He's hanging out the window. God bless America. You know, God bless America is going on. And this black guy is walking by, and he's like, hey, bro, you lost? And the guy's like, what? And he's like, are you lost? And he's like, where are you going? And the black guy's like, I'm going to NASCAR. You sure you're going to NASCAR? And then the guy's like, yes, sir. And then Drewski spits out the car, like I think he was imitating like maybe chewing tobacco, and he spit out the car. You can see the guy like stand back, and he's like, well, you know, what are you doing going to NASCAR? And he's like, I'm going to NASCAR.
Oh, girl. So
and he's
what
like, do you want to come with us? And the guy's like, no, sir, I'm good.
So what is the people saying about this?
So there's been mixed emotions. There's been mixed emotions depending on where you sit. There's another scene where he's talking to a black guy, and he spits again, like right in front of him, like chewing tobacco, kind of like spits in front of him. And then he's also with, you know, non-black people, white people that are there. He's drinking beer. He's calling the girl, you know, honey, come sit in my lap, and laughing and, you know, all sorts of things. But nobody knew, all these people, they had no idea
it was Drewski.
that it was Drewski.
So he's spitting in, but what are the people saying on social about this experiment, if you will? Because I've not seen it.
I think the controversy has been, there's been some comparison to it to blackface, you know, the opposite. And then also, you know, I saw something today where he was like, am I being canceled? And I think it's just kind of the disrespect with targeting those the black
Sure.
people there. You can tell, like, the one guy was uncomfortable. And we know there's some trauma to that, right? We're going to NASCAR. We don't want no problems, you know, with white people. So
It's a
we're
predominantly white
saying
event.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, sir. You know, because we don't
So
want
what
no
was
problems.
the point of his experiment?
I have no idea.
Okay, that is the piece I need to know. But what I hear you saying is that people were offended, like when white people do blackface. Was it black people offended by him doing this, or white, or both?
I think it was both. So the comments that I read was there was a lot of, you know, white people saying, hey, you know, this is reverse racism. And he's, you know, dressing up and making a mockery of, you know,
The
hillbilly, you know, kind of fanatic, you know, fan. And then the black people are saying, like, you went too far with this. You know, we're uncomfortable. You're spitting in front of us. You know, the wrong person might have been aggressive towards you. And then the other person, you can tell he was clearly, like, uncomfortable.
Well, nobody in my circle is talking about this. Like, what are people saying in your circles about it?
So I was talking to a friend. So I saw it the other day, and I didn't think anything of it. I was actually amused because once I found out who it was, I'm like, well, damn, they did, like, a really good job. Like, he's sunburned, he had tattoos.
Yeah.
You had no idea it was him.
I didn't know it was him.
No, I don't know. It wasn't funny to me, but I was just kind of more amused. But I was talking to a friend, a gentleman, and he was like, Shatima, I didn't like it. I thought it went too far. He's like, as a black man, you know, when we go out in those spaces and when we have someone like this, you know, talking to us, there's trauma. Going back to the yes, sir, like his tone, he was timid when he was responding because he didn't know, you know, where that conversation was going.
So he was triggered. Like,
so
it
he was triggered,
South,
and he was like, it's humiliating, you know, as a grown man, you know, to have to say, you know, to feel like you have to be humbled at this place, because he was asking him, are you lost? Like, you know, you're black going to this NASCAR event. Like, what are you doing here? That was the joke.
That's why I said it's like that old, you know, down south back in the day kind of slavery feel for him. And I guess I wasn't there. Like, I looked at it, I'm like, what is Drewski doing?
Exactly.
Zoop. You know, it didn't look like him.
Yeah.
I didn't give it much thought, but I think this is proof everybody has different perspectives.
Absolutely.
On how we view anything, really, you know, and just to hear that, like, I was like, I didn't get that, but I get it, right?
Yeah.
We all have
when
our
I
own
went back
perspectives.
and re-looked at it after speaking to him, I can see, but my initial response, I was more amused. And like you said, I wasn't sure why he did it, but I was like, damn, this is like his makeup artist, and the costume was pretty phenomenal.
You know, we ladies, because we like the makeup. Like, who did this makeup?
He has tattoos,
right?
everything.
Even with a dead person, who did the body? Right? We so black.
It's so black. True.
So this episode, being season 2, episode 2, I want to dive into, I know, shout outs to us. I want to take a perspective from small business owners a little bit, and really kind of talk, especially with PTMG really supporting both the job seekers, employees, and small businesses.
Absolutely.
Why do you think they need HR or some compliance?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So PTMG does, we support the job seekers, and we support, you know, the traditional HR consulting for small businesses. Typically, small businesses do not have HR departments. It's usually added later, and the significance of that is obviously for compliance and scaling. So I always tell people, the moment you start hiring employees for your company, you should consider having some sort of HR resource, because an employee is going to equal some employee actions.
I mean,
and if you're not familiar with the laws around being an employer, you can put yourself at risk. So I would say, as soon as you start scaling, you may not need to hire an HR person on the payroll as far as a W-2 employee, but you should have a resource that's available to you.
And we call it fractional HR. And for example, I think it's important to highlight a good example of some of the compliance and laws. You hire someone, there are certain laws around time cards and punching it in and how you pay them. Right? We have people who are like, well, they didn't work this or they didn't work enough, I'm going to cut their hours. And there's laws around how people are paid. And so as small business owners, we kind of want to do what we want, if you will, as it pertains to that. And you can't. There really are laws. Even paid sick time in Arizona is a real law. And it's been one that has been a struggle
Managing.
for HR practitioners absolutely to struggle. Like, we hate paid sick time
hate.
law in Arizona.
We hate it.
Because you basically can't say anything. Like, if somebody calls out sick and they have sick time available, just leave them alone.
Yep.
Anything, can you switch the day? Like, it's an issue. It's a compliance issue, and it could cost us money. So I think, to your point, there's all these things that come up when you hire 1-2 employees that you don't want to spend your time managing as a business owner. You really want to give that to what we call fractional HR.
Yeah.
So you don't have to hire a full-time HR practitioner. You can find somebody to support the needs, right? And not every aspect, not 40 hours a week. So
Absolutely.
It saves just a little bit of money. What's the most effective way for small businesses to recruit and retain employees in especially a competitive market? I think, honestly, I don't know. I feel like employees are having a harder time finding jobs. But in general, how do employers retain and attract good employees?
Yeah, for sure. So for small businesses, they have the challenge of figuring out how to scale. And so depending on the role, I always, have told the clients that I work with to look at the demand of the position. If it's somebody that you're probably going to need 40 hours a week forever, then you need to hire them as a W-2. If it's project-based, if it's, a fractional HR, somebody just to help you within these phases, you should probably consider contract hires. So contract to hire, temporary support. There are agencies out there that can supply that, or you can even do your own 1099 and bringing that person in. I would probably follow up with an HR practitioner, professional to help you work through the 1099, because as TJ said, there's some rules and laws that go with that. But you have to assess the business and see where those roles are, as opposed to bringing everyone in as a W-2. There's responsibility there versus contract labor through an agency, an outside vendor, or you're bringing someone in as an independent, 1099.
And expense, right?
Yeah.
When you hire an employee, you have FICA, you have employer tax, you have all of these different taxes in addition to just their hourly pay. So we would ask you to, look at, do you need this person ongoing, or is this a small time project? But also, when you're hiring employees, a lot of times, and I've seen a shift post-COVID, employers just kind of treated people like slaves. You're here to do a job, and they're not really human. Lord forbid, I got to call out because my baby's sick. There's challenges. And so good employers care about their employees. They actually treat them like people. You don't have to get in their personal business, but you do have to care about their well-being. If they're not doing well today, send them home. It'll cost you more to keep them at work if they're unhealthy. We call it absenteeism in the workplace, and it is an expense that's not recognized on like profit and loss.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the key. Good managers keep good employees because they show them, they recognize, there's a trust that's built. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's something that I think leaders forget, that their key stakeholders are those employees, and that them being there is an exchange of time and talent, right? So it's not, this, you should be grateful and thankful you have a job and get it done and do more, but there is an exchange of that time and service. And so showing value and concern, and, humanizing the workplace, because life is lifing. Things are happening. There are unexpected things that happen. So taking care of those employees helps you scale, helps you grow, as well.
And that goes a long way. Think about how many times we've heard an employee say, oh my God, when I was going through this thing with my mom or my kids, my boss was so understanding, right? That puts so much equity in the bank, with that relationship. And that's what they want. They want an employer that sees them as a person, sees this as a fair exchange. But pre-COVID, I think employers were conditioned to treat employees like, you better be glad I got you. You had this job, like Shatima said. You better be glad I picked you. Where now the tables have turned, and employees recognize there's value in what they bring to every company. And I think that's important. What I want to go shift to now, Shatima, is for business owners and leaders. How do they handle those toxic employees, the poor performers?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, they'll wait because they started great, right?
Right.
John was the top notch, like, oh, John was killing it. And then
Right.
all of a sudden, John's not performing well, missing all the marks, missing work. How
Right.
do managers handle John in the most effective way?
Yeah, and I think all these questions kind of talk to each other, but one of the first rules in HR is to seek to understand. So usually if there's a decline in engagement, productivity, absenteeism, any of those things, there's a reason for that. And so you have to go back to that, what we just talked about, caring.
Yeah.
You're going to have to bring John in and say, hey, John, when you started 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago, you were on fire and you were engaged. Now we notice that you jump on the calls, you don't turn your camera on, that you're showing late, to meetings, that you're not providing feedback, like what's going on. And I think more often than not, you will find that there are things that are triggering those things.
Yep.
So in those instances, I think you work with your HR department, your leaders, and see if there's accommodations, if there is retraining that needs to happen, or just, John just might need a day off.
Right.
John
or
might
some
need-
time off, right?
Yes.
John may be going through something
Absolutely.
where FMLA, which is a federal law, he may need to tap into that federal law.
Absolutely. Or even those EAP programs and some of those
Employee
resources.
assistance programs.
Yes.
Those are some of our HR acronyms.
Yes.
But y'all know what that is because we constantly are like, here's the EAP, that's free to you.
Right.
It services that support because we can only do so much. But there is an onus with the employee or the employer, right? The leaders to tap in and say, what's going on?
Absolutely.
Tell us how we can help you.
Especially if they were performing.
Right.
And it dropped.
Yep.
Now, there are those, they were never performing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They came in.
Yeah.
They wowed you in the interview.
Yeah, bad hire.
And then they got in the door and you're like, who hired this person?
Yeah. Those are the bad hires. We'll talk about those next time, right?
Yeah. So those individuals, I think you have to, you're obviously seeking to understand and figuring out, but that's a behavior change. And that's something, there's always the will and the skill. Is this a skill issue or is this a will issue? And when it's a will issue, then I think that's when you utilize those progressive disciplines. Sometimes it's a change of environment. Sometimes, being shook a little bit on that administrative leave. And those corrective actions is enough to let them know that their job might be in jeopardy so you can change the behavior.
Yeah.
And, in extreme cases, sometimes you have to remove them. They need to be terminated and let go.
Yeah. So Shatima threw in something really quick. She said it quickly, but I think it's important to tap into the progressive steps of discipline. In a company, that is the policy that we ask the managers to adhere to when it comes to managing issues at work, right? Yeah. And you all have access to it, whether you're a leader, a manager, an employee. That policy is public, right? And it typically says something like, have a verbal and then do a write-up and then do a first, second write-up and maybe a suspension. It goes through the steps. And what we find is oftentimes leaders wait because Johnny was performing so great, now Johnny's underperforming and then 2 weeks are gone by and Johnny's still underperforming and they don't want to deal with the progressive steps. They don't want to have a conversation with Johnny. They want us to fire Johnny, right? And it's like, no
documentation,
right? Have you had a discussion? Have you written Johnny up? And so, yes, you may be the employee who's now had a boss that was ride or die, letting you get away with it, who now is writing you up. And oftentimes, I feel like those employees get frustrated and they're like, "What's going on? They wasn't doing this. They coming for me," and there's a lack of accountability. But the managers have to, right? If they think that just being your friend is going to make the change, it often doesn't. And so they have to start to show you we're serious. Hey, Shatima, I've seen your performance declining. I just want to bring it to your attention. And then you still messing up. Shatima, look, you still fucking up. I got to present this written to you.
Right.
Because now that's putting you on notice, right? Like that's their job to help you either perform or like Shatima said, exit left, because sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Absolutely.
So I think my advice to managers, don't wait until the person is just driving you crazy. And now you like, HR, get rid of them, and you haven't done any of the steps. Right. We won't. We will not. And then once you start writing them up, employee, if it's not accurate, that's your opportunity to tap in and have a voice, because we will look at all of the write-ups. We will look at the entire file. And if there is no write-ups, this person's stellar.
Yeah.
So.
And in that, you have to allow, rehabilitation, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just write them up. You have to allow for them to change their behavior, so that progressive discipline is only in place to change behaviors.
Good point.
And so making sure when you do write that up that there are deliverables or something where they have an opportunity to change their behavior, or they have, choose not to. And that's when you progress that.
Well, because the other side of that is, now you write them up, right? And they, let's just say, have had some horrible attendance. And you do this write-up, and now next week they miss one day, and you like, I'm writing them up again.
Right.
It's like, no, right? Now you're not being reasonable, because now you're just ready to get rid of them.
Right.
Oh, HR, we gonna smell through that, y'all. So y'all ain't got to worry. We do not sign off on that overt, I'm trying to get rid of this person. We want it to be done the right way. We really want managers to have that effective conversation, to give that person a chance, right? To see if there's a gap, if there's something missing, to help them improve, or if they just are not a good fit. Okay.
And I think that's a good point as far as the HR role, to mitigate that risk of, them now feeling, that they're being targeted or not having the opportunity to adjust. But then also that HR role of coaching and developing the managers, of trying to, it is easier for you in some cases to keep that person, retain them, seek to understand, provide those small accommodations if needed, as opposed to moving them out and getting somebody else in new and risking that, 60, 90-day
learning curve. Yes, because everybody has to go through the learning curve all over, right? When somebody has learned the job, that is an investment. That is truly a time and monetary investment to the business. And so we can't just throw them away because there's a change in the behavior. So last, Shatima, how do employees and managers focus on building that trust in the workplace? Whether you're a leader or you're an employee, what's important to build the trust as a leader, but to stand out as an employee? Let's do that.
And I think that those work hand in hand, right? So I think as an employee, you have to do the job. Do your job. Do your job. I need to know that you're going to be here on time. If you're chronically late, you're not building trust with me, because I can't depend on you. If you're the person who's supposed to open the building, be the first one on the phones, but you're constantly late, you're already creating that gap of trust. So I always tell people, start with doing the job. Do the job. As far as the employees, I think we have to live our values. If you have a mission statement, vision statement, most companies do. Employer, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, you have to live those values and show your team that. It's the little things that build trust with your team, acknowledging wins, those attaboys, those high fives. Transparency, giving the why. Sometimes managers don't want to give the why. But there are people who need the why. I need to know why we're shooting for this. I need to know why we had to pivot. Right? So I can adopt and be on board and pivot a little smoother. So I think transparency is big in that space as well. And then, always advocating and taking care of the employees. And if there are concerns from the employees, running those up. And being transparent. Sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay. But at least I know I went to TJ with my concern. TJ said she spoke to CEO John. CEO John said, not today. Hey, Shatima, you had a valid concern. It was a really great idea. Unfortunately, in this quarter, we're not going to do it, but we're going to look to see if maybe we can implement it. Later.
Where I want to start is with the employees. What I often see is, Shatima said, do the job. they'll do the job and they'll compare it to a poor performer. Well, I'm here every day, right? Because they have somebody on the team who misses a lot of work. You being here every day, that's an essential job function, right? To be promoted, to stand out, we're not looking for the core requirements. Don't compare yourself to the lowest on the team. Try to be the highest performer on the team with, of course, the expectation of being rewarded, being, able to receive that promotion, or if a role comes open, you can be considered for and you have allies. And so have good attitude. I think that is really, really key. You don't have to be everybody's friend at work, but show up and be positive. A lot of times, honestly, I did like to be in my space, but if I'm out, if I was about, if people were in my office, I was very pleasant. I was always, how you doing? How you kids doing? I remembered people's names. And so having that positive disposition really, really weighs
for sure
heavy in the workplace, because whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, you decide, but people treat you a certain way based on whether they like you or not in the workplace, right? Your manager may advocate for you more if they like you versus the employee that gets on everybody's nerves. So that's from the employee's perspective. Again, leaders have to be accountable, transparent, like Shatima said. It's okay to be friendly with them, but not necessarily friends. Understanding what their needs are. And what I find challenging is don't be a leader that thinks everything I think is the best way. Be open to receiving. What do you guys think about that? How did that turn out to you guys? Right, really being open to the team, because you have a team of experts. You have people you've hired that you believe contribute something. So I think that's how we build that. It is essential to any and every team. So this episode has been really, really fun. What I like is that these were questions that we get on a regular basis.
All the time.
At least 4 of them were real questions that I was like, let's just answer them live. So what do you think, Shatima, if we do like a question of the day and answer our audience's questions?
I think that's a really great idea, because like you said, I don't think there's a week that goes by that we're not being asked by our friends or even referred by friends of friends to help with some of those. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah. So how should they submit their questions to us?
So I think what we should do, TJ, we're on all the social media platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Like, follow, and share our postings, but reach out to us in those direct messagings.
Yeah. If you follow us, like, subscribe, all the things, and you send us a question, we will answer it on the episode, and we'll shout out your handles. We'll make sure we put your name and handle from the platform you sent your question. So we're on TikTok, all the platforms. It's going to be Let's Talk About It, the podcast, AZ. Because we are in Arizona. But this has been great. And we look forward to answering y'all questions soon. Shatima, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, good job. My name is Shatima. I am also on all of the social media platforms under Procure Talent Management Group. I am the CEO and founder. I can also be found personally at Lady Gresham _11.
Yeah, I'm TJ Laurie. TJ speaks on all social platforms. I'm the president of the Black HR Society, who is our sponsor. And I want to give a shout out and thank the Black HR Society for making a meaningful difference in the careers and lives of not only Black HR professionals, but of the community. You can find us on all social platforms, or you can reach out to us at Ask HR at the Black HR Society. We'll answer your questions if you send them there as well. We review resumes and all the things. If you'd like to be a guest, a sponsor, or if you know somebody that make a great guest, please reach out to us. TJ at wewannnatalkaboutit.com is my email, because we want to talk about it with you. And we are so grateful you joined us this time, and we'll see you back next time. Until then, be good and bye-bye.
Bye.